Hello everyone, I'm Jay and welcome to my canary barn. I've had a number of inquiries preparing nests for the breeding season from members of the Northern Alberta Cage Bird Club. When it comes to preparing nests for canaries, it's a rather simple procedure. First, one just has to acquire a nest of the correct size, and then you take a nest liner and you insert a twist tie in the nest liner through two small holes as such, and then you simply take that and insert it into the nest, put through the holes in the bottom of the nest, pull them tight, give it a little twist, pat it down, and then you take some nesting material and you put it inside the nest, and there, voila, you're done. It's that simple. But there's a few things that you have to consider along the way. And probably the first thing that you want to consider is the size of the nest. Now usually these come in either a 5-inch or a 3.5-inch size. You can see the difference in the size there. And generally speaking, the smaller nest is for your Fifes, Gloucesters, Irish Fancy, Scots, and Colourbreds. Well, the larger ones, whether it be like this or like this, these are used for your Borders, Norwich, and Yorkies, etc. Now, most of the nests made commercially these days are either plastic or metal, although there are a number of bamboo types available. You just have to make certain when you're buying nests for your canaries that you're buying them for canaries and not for finches. Now for finches, they make a number of nest shapes, and these are used generally of the bamboo or woven material. There's basket types like this. There's a larger basket type of this sort, and this gets secured to the cage via a screw in the side of the cage. Now this here is a very large example, but they also make small ones of this sort of variety. It's just that this is what I have in hand. There's a variety that looks like this. These are actually designed to go on the cage floor itself, as opposed to being attached to the cage front. Something in that fashion there. So then there's a number of metal ones, and these ones also come large, medium, and small in this particular variety. And again, these are designed to go on the cage front wire itself and hang there. So it seems that what's quite popular these days, or for a number of years, is this variety here. Now these usually come with a little holder of sorts, so that when you take your nest, you slide it down into the slots on the holder, and that's to help secure it in place. There's also a provision, a little slot here, and that's to put a screw into either the side or the back of your cage. And so these are designed for the side or the back of the cage. Myself, because I like working off of the front of the cages, I ended up making a little wood block with a small screw in it. The small screw extends out to allow for the thickness of the plastic plus the wire cage front. You would put this on the outside of the cage, the nest goes inside and hooks on, and voila, done. So that's a simple little trick that I learned many years ago. Again, these come in various sizes, as I mentioned, with the orange according to the type of canary. There's also a variety that I like this that I found when I was in Zwolle in the Netherlands. And this has a plastic bit on the back, and that's also for hanging your cage on the cage front itself, and works rather well. So I've got a bunch of these that I'm trying out this year. We'll see how successful I am with them. There's also a nest like this, has no holder on it, and that's because you should be buying a separate little holder like this, and the nest sits there secure. A nest of this nature is designed to stay away from the cage front so that the droppings of the youngsters go on the floor of your cage and not on the floor of your bird room. So that's something else that's out there. For those who want to go in designer colors, there's also designer white. This is another variation of this sort of thing, in that it has a little plastic attachment, a little dewberry here, and this would go between the wires of your cages, and you put it in, give it a turn, and there it is. Then you take your nest and simply drop the end of it into that holder, and it holds it secure for your breeding needs. This is an inexpensive variation here. It has the two hooks on the back, works really well. Has the flat piece at the back to give some support to keep the nest stable. Again, this is designed for a cage front to go on, or to go on the wire itself. So myself, years ago, when I first started out, I found that these nests here ran about $6 or $7 a piece in the pet stores. And since I had about 10 pairs of canaries at the time, I thought that a little bit expensive to spend $60 or $70 at that time. And so, especially as an apprentice carpenter. So I turned around and I found that I was able to buy these strainers, and I was able to get them for $1 a piece. And by simply cutting off the handle, I had the makings of a nest. So then it was just a matter of securing my nest to the cage front or the back of the cage, whatever the situation was going to call for. I came up with a holder, which was simply a metal ring with a wire piece at the back to hook onto the cage front, and then place the nest inside, ready to go. So you can be a little bit innovative when you're looking at depending on what your situation is. From that particular design, I went away from the metal holder and I went to just going with a straight piece of wire that I bent to configure so that I could turn around and hang that on my cage front. And that also worked like a charm. So it's a lot more for me, it's a lot more economical. Cost me, like I said, $1 a piece these days with the dollar stores out there. You can probably pick them up for even less. So those are some considerations that you need to take a look at for nests. There's also a few different varieties of a nest of this sort, and this is designed actually to hang on the outside of the cage. And some cages are designed with a little door on the end, or sometimes in the front, and you would simply take your nest box and hang it on the outside. One of the nice features when you have this sort of thing is ease of access for getting at it. You don't have to reach in the cage. It has a little door here at the on the back side of it that you're able to lift up and have access to the nest and the youngsters. So that's something you would want to consider if you have that sort of provision on your cages. So that pretty well takes care of the different types of nests out there. Then the next thing you have to take into consideration is actually the liner that you're going to put in the nest, as I had shown you here with the liner that I put in the nest felt that I put in this nest. Okay, so at one time fanciers used to use all kinds of different pieces of heavy material, cloth, to make their nest liners. The nest liners are to provide some protection for the chicks that are in the nests, and if you've got hens that are particularly poor at building nests, this gives you a good base to, like I said, for the youngsters that are in the nest. And so they don't get their claws and their feet caught in the wiring of the nest. So nest felts are usually about 5 inches across, maybe about 1/4 of an inch thick. Some people will, and they're usually available from a bird shop or online. Some people just like to use a felt material that they could pick up at a fabric shop, and they cut that into circles or whatever they desire, and they use that in place as well. Then there's a matter of securing the nest felt into the nest. And so back in the old days, they used to actually take a needle and thread and go around and sew that and secure it in place. Now, and that worked really well, but it's rather time consuming. So it was discovered some years ago by whomever that carbolic soap works very well for securing the nests. And again, this is an old-fashioned thing. It's hard to get carbolic soap these days, maybe online, but not too many pharmacies carry it anymore. And what they would do is they would take the carbolic soap and shave it, and then pour some hot water on it and make it into a paste. And then they would brush that on the inside of the nest pan, then insert the nest liner on top of that. Just let the paste dry, and that would hold the liner in place. Now, carbolic soap was used basically because of its disinfectant properties. So that's about the long and the short of that. Like I said, it used to be in all pharmacies, but now I find it difficult to find. Then I've heard of people using PVA or white glue and actually painting that with a brush on the inside of the nest, putting their nest liner in there and putting it aside to let it dry, and then putting it into the cages. For me, I question that sort of that use, because it's going to be very difficult to get those nest liners out later on. For me, with using a twist tie, I'm able to get probably about 5 years worth of use by just being able to take them out and wash them over and over again. And then at one time, myself and others used to use hot glue. And for that, you would just take a hot glue gun put a little squirt of hot glue on the bottom of the nest pan, insert your nest liner, smooth it out. The glue would set in a matter of seconds and done. But again, the problem with that is taking the nest liner out afterwards at the end of the season, and you invariably, it's sometimes difficult to get that glue out of the bottom of the nest, and you invariably end up damaging the nest liner itself, and you get far less usages out of it because of the damage that's done. So like I said, I used the twist ties. I picked these up at a grocer supply shop, and they're already cut to length, 4 inches long. You often find these in the grocery department and around the fruits and vegetables to secure the bags when you buy the products. But I got this little box here of 2,000 pieces for $6, and that'll last me my lifetime, so no need to go buying carbolic soaps and various other glues. And so all one has to do is you take your nest liner, you take I take a pair of small scissors, make a little hole, make 2 little holes in the nest liner, take a twist tie, again insert it through the 2 little holes and up through the holes in the bottom of the nest, give it a twist, lay it flat, done. So I think that's for me that's the method that I find that that works the best. From there, I guess the main thing is in doing that, you're able to take these things out, you're able to use them, reuse them. I will take them out at the end of the season, wash them, a little bleach and soap, turn around and hang them outside in the sunshine there. And once they're dry, then I turn around, pack them up, and put them away for the following year. Now, I'm able to get probably 5+ years out of a nest felt, so that's part of my little contribution to my economics there. And then there's a whole bunch of different materials that you can use for lining the nest, or putting in with the on top of the nest felt here. Myself, I use jute. I buy this at a hardware store. It's for wrapping your plants at wintertime to protect them. So some people call it burlap, other people call it hessian fiber. It works like a charm. I end up taking the jute. It comes in a 3 meter by 1 meter piece. Take my scissors, I cut it into a 2-inch long or wide strips. I then take these strips and I cut them into approximately 2-inch squares. So they're easy peasy. I like this material because it's easy for me or the birds to turn around and take it apart. I know that a number of people will actually just save the bags from various things they buy at the grocers, in this case basmati rice, and they'll take them after they're emptied, wash them out, a little bit of bleach and soap, and cut these up. But I find that the weave on these is much tighter, and it's much more difficult to take these things apart. But it does work, and if you're getting them for nothing, you may as well use them. For myself, I take the squares at the beginning of the season, and I'll put a bunch of them together. I'll put 5 or 6 squares together. I'll take a binder clip, what we call a binder clip here, and I'll put the pieces in the binder clip, and then I'll just take them and leave it there. The hens will come and take the stuff apart, and they'll pull that jute and everything apart in short notice, and use it for making their nests with. Now, like I said, there's a number of commercial products that are made these days. And when I was in Zwolle, I saw all kinds of things that were being advertised. Now, there's a company called Cecil Fiber, and they make all sorts of combinations of material. In this particular bag, it says it's coconut, Cecil fiber, jute, and cotton. You know, here's another company, Quicko. They have a fiber that they call Sharpie, and it's a white product. It's cut into short lengths, about 2.5 inches long. The Canaries, I'm just trying it this year. They're not going crazy for it, but they are using a little bit of it. I think that's actually very similar to this product, again, from Cecil Fiber. In fact, just called Cecil. And this is made from it's just the fibers from a plant, like a guava plant, something of that nature. Let's see, what else? I should mention nest felts. I buy mine from England. They come in a package of 25 like this. These are what they call a wool felt, and I have a preference for them only because I bought 200 of them, so got to use them up slowly but surely. They also make these in a jute, and so as a jute product, this one has been bleached, but it's like this. It's a little coarser material, a little coarser felt than what the wool ones are. When it comes time to fitting these, sometimes when you go to fit them in the nest, you end up with a great big crumple, which is sometimes hard to compress and get out of the way. In which case, you would just take your scissors, you would make a cut out a little, either cut out a little section, or just by making the cut, you're able to turn around and overlap that onto itself. And that gets rid of that little bump that you're dealing with. When it comes to, like I said, there's a number of ready-made products and combinations of products, and you have to be aware of what is actually in these things. You just don't buy a bag of nesting material at face value. The one thing that, when I'm looking at these nesting materials, is something that to buy, and many of these are not commercially available in northern Alberta, but in Europe and other places in North America, they're readily available. This particular one that I have here has the jute fibers in it, the Hessian fibers. It has cotton and some Cecil. So they like that. They like this particular material. This is another one that says it's animal hair, cotton, moss, and jute fiber. Again, the birds really seem to like this one. It feels and seems like more of a natural sort of product. I also, in my travels, have run across this being sold as nesting material. What it is camel hair, and it seems to be okay, but I find it's a very soft material, and that ends up being a problem for me with it being so soft. If you're using it, use it sparingly, mix it with other products. This here is a padding that you quite often find in upholstery. This is a cotton, so people quite often use this. So the one thing with these very soft materials when using them is that if the hens have too much of this in their nest, when they go and lay their eggs, the eggs actually sink right down into this. And then the hens have difficulty turning the eggs. And if they can't turn the eggs, they will end up dying. They're not viable. Some people like to use a white string material that you can buy at fabric places as a stuffing for craft projects. As a ready-made product, there was this here stuff called nesting puffs. And this is actually just a coarse cotton that's been cleaned. It's in little pieces. So I think the birds really like this because it's soft and it's white, and they seem to like lighter colored, canaries seem to like lighter colored materials, but they do accept the burlap, the hessian fiber, quite rapidly. You can, at the pet stores and pet shops, bird shops, find little boxes of nesting material like this. This has a little clip in the back that would allow you to secure this to your cage front inside. And inside of here is a bunch of small cotton fibers, probably about an inch long. If you only have one pair of birds or something, maybe that's a good thing and something that will work for you. As I mentioned, when it comes to the burlap fibers, especially from basmati rice bags, the weave on this is far tighter than the weave on the burlap that's used for outside. So that's why I prefer this. It's much easier. When my kids were quite small, usually on Saturday mornings as they were sitting back watching TV, then I'd come in with a box for each of them as they're watching their morning cartoons. And this box would be full of these little squares. And I'd give it to them for them to turn around and take them apart and create the loose fiber. Because when I found that hens weren't building the nests, what I thought to my satisfaction, or weren't doing a very good job, then I would take the loose fiber and I would put it in the nest, and I would take a small light bulb and put it in the center and give it a few turns. It compacts it. It gives it a little bit of a twist, and the hens will readily accept the nest in this fashion. They'll redesign it a wee bit to their liking, but that works well for them. So I'll mention again, the only thing that I don't like to use or have around in my canary nests is coconut fiber. Coconut fiber is quite long, probably up to about 6 inches long. It can... I think actually in this package here they have some, and like I said, it tends to be rather longish in nature, and so sometimes when the hens are building their nest and they pull on the material to redesign their nest, when they catch a long fiber like that, everything comes out of the nest, and I don't like that at all. I'm sure they get frustrated in their efforts of trying to build a nest with that stuff. It might work good for finches. It doesn't work good for canaries. And then I guess I should mention that I don't advocate the use of insecticides around your nests. I know I've read and seen videos where people will actually spray their nests with some sort of insecticide and leave it dry before using. Then they'll take and put the nest felt in, and they'll spray the nest liner as well. I don't think that's a good idea at all. You have to remember that eggshells are rather porous, and that they will absorb these chemicals and invariably they will make the eggs non-viable. So if you have a great big problem with that, that probably has something to do with it. You know, they're well-intentioned when they do that, but you know, if they're trying to deter mites, they should actually take care of the mite problem in their bird room. You know, doing that sort of thing is akin to taking headache tablets, trying to avoid having a headache later on. If you have a mite problem, then you should treat it in the appropriate manner first. And you know, and the other thing to keep in mind is that when you're using powders, a lot of people like to dust with diatomaceous earth and powders with insecticides in them and such. Diatomaceous earth I don't mind, but powders with insecticides in I don't like to use in a nest for the reasons that I've stated. Now, when you're doing that sort of thing with powdering, you have to remember that with the hen jumping in and out of the nest, that those powders will actually settle. And when you go and take a look at the nest a week later, you know, all the powders are in the bottom of the nest. And anytime that I've had mite problems, and over the years I've encountered them numerous times, but the mites are invariably all around the top of the nest liner and at the top of the nest. They're not down at the bottom. So if you're going to do your powdering, do it after you've detected them. Myself, I treat my birds with ivermectin before a couple of weeks before the breeding season, just to make sure I've got things well in hand. If I'm in the midst of breeding and I notice that mites have shown up, they miraculously come from out of the nowhere, I always keep isopropylene alcohol on hand in a little squirt bottle. Now, I don't squirt this on the nest. If they're red mites, the red mites tend to inhabit the cage, all the crevices and cracks. The isopropylene alcohol kills on contact, it evaporates quickly, and I've never lost a bird through the use of that product. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. When I was working, it's something I kept a bottle of on hand, and when I saw mites before I was heading out to work, I would just give a quick spray in the corners, around the perch ends, the feed dishes, etc., just to knock them down until I got home at the end of the day to deal with things properly. So overall, I hope this information was of help to novices and breeders who are a little longer in the tooth, and wish everybody all the best in the upcoming breeding season. Thank you very much.